Dragons in the sky. You better watch out, 'cause dragons mean you die. Dragons in the sky. You're gonna fucking die. If you see my dragon, I will eat you. Dragons in... All right. Look. That might have been my best intro. Chet! Or do I mean Brett? Brett Lannister was recently cast in House of the Dragon, and aside from that, there were a few other characters cast, but mostly, we've been dry as the motherfucking Dothraki Sea. If the worst case scenario happened and all the ghost grass took over, like in the famous Dothraki prophecy. In this video, I'm going to go over the one thing they have given us. And at this point, it was 5 months ago. Hopefully, we're going to be getting a trailer soon. Soon could mean anything. This year, they have to give us a trailer this year, right? Eventually, they're going to tell us the release date. Eventually, the show is going to come on and I'm going to plop my computer on and get ready to write notes for a review. Eventually, that's going to happen, but not right now. So in this video, I'm going to discuss the teaser. I'll probably overanalyze it, but do me a massive favor and slap a like on this video. So like goal is going to be 420. Get it? Zeldrizas Bustari, Ixos, and dragons in the sky. You're gonna fucking die. Alright, now just in case y'all forgot, this is 1 minute and 15 seconds, and it's literally no CGI. It's the sets that were either filmed on location, right? So they used ancient ruins of castles or restored castles that have been kept up, or scenes that they built entirely on set at the Leavesden Studios. We did not see any dragons, but we did get to see fight scenes and a general feel for the show. It's going to be amazing. This timeline in history in George R. R. Martin's world of Ice and Fire is the most referenced time period, more than anything, by the main POV characters in the A Song of Ice and Fire books, right? So somebody's always referencing something that happened during this time period. Like, yeah, the Blackfire rebellions are mentioned somewhat in the more recent history that are closer to the 300 AC year. At least that's when Joffrey and Marjorie get married. So most of the events are around that time period. Obviously, Joffrey dies, but some of the more recent histories, so around that timeline, obviously Robert's Rebellion is referenced more heavily because those characters, some of them are reminiscing or some of them are still alive and talking with some of the other POVs. But for the most part, one of the times when you're reading it, when it's the most fantastical type of history, it always relates to the Dance of the Dragons. Whether it's the Eric and Arik Cargill, the twins who supposedly professed their love to each other and then immediately killed each other. Like, they weren't in love with each other being twin brothers, but they're like, hey bro, I love you, but you're on the wrong side kind of thing. And then they killed each other. Like, even the minor details like that are referenced in the main story. So George has almost always meant for this to be, if not another Game of Thrones show, he's always meant it to be something that he expanded upon eventually when he wrote more for the Ice and Fire world. But let's jump right into it, just starting already with the overanalyzing. We haven't even gotten a second in. Boom! I can't play the audio. Sorry for that burp. I'll edit that out. Now, I will say that Daemon's wig is accurate for the TV show, but not for the books. Targaryens have similar hair to Cersei in season 1. Not the color, but the texture of, like, there always being sort of that wavy, looseless curl. Like, the Targaryens in the books have hair similar to mine. Less nappy and white and silver, platinum blonde, and all that good shit. It's said to be like spun white gold almost, right? That's the color that we kind of, it's a mix of white blonde and like blonde, right? Traditionally. So Daemon's wig is in canon with the main show, but a lot of people complained that it looks stupid. I just wish they threw in a few of the curls like with Cersei. But he's carrying a torch into what appears to be the dragon glass cave on Dragonstone. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if him and Rhaenyra hook up there. That's one of their secret spots. If you remember, and I don't have the time to drop that in right now, but if you remember when Jon and Daenerys went there, that seemed like it was a somewhat secluded area. And obviously, if Daemon and Rhaenyra are, doing the nasty at this time, maybe they want a little privacy. Maybe this is during the timeline when it's before they get married and they don't want everyone to know they're doing the nasty. That could be the case, but also this could just be a scene that was filmed for the teaser and may not necessarily happen in the show. Like maybe it'll get left out on the cutting room floor. Continuing on with the teaser here. It is, in fact, an HBO original series, but it's written by George R. R. Martin. So if the main show takes place in and around 300 AC, and this war kicks off in 130 AC, that's 170 years before the events of the main series. If they're saying this takes place 200 years before, 200 years total, that's 30 years before that, so this has already been confirmed. We're getting younger versions of Rhaenyra and younger versions of Alicent. We may get younger versions of a few other characters, but ultimately this is going to start at and around maybe we'll get a flashback to the Great Council of 101 AC with Jaehaerys, although I highly doubt it. It's going to be starting around 111 AC. All right, so right there is Blackfyre. Now, what's interesting is that a lot of people that I saw, and I could probably scroll down and find the comments, right? And when this video was posted, a lot of people were saying they thought that Blackfyre and Dark Sister, we don't necessarily get, well, I guess we do when Daemon is fighting Kristen Cole coming up here. A lot of people thought that this sword would look more ornate, because unlike Dark Sister, Blackfyre was actually wielded by Aegon the Conqueror himself. So if a conqueror is going to wield a sword, you would imagine it would be like, something you'd find in Elder Scrolls Online, or maybe the secret item in New World. I don't know, I haven't played that game in a while, but what I gotta say is, this is not Lord of the Rings, where that sort of polished and super high fantasy, almost unbelievable kind of look for armor and swords and stuff, that works for that world, kind of, right? There's people that don't think it does. But for this world, everything is nitty gritty. Blackfyre was very much used, right? It was not something that was just kept somewhere and put up. Right, so Aegon used this sword to forge the Seven Kingdoms. There's going to be moments where Aegon II, who is Viserys's, it's his eldest son, but his technically second oldest living child, it's Rhaenyra's half-brother. They haven't officially announced his cast, but I think some of the rumors online is that he's going to be played by Ty Tennant. There's going to be moments when Blackfyre is in fact used. So we're going to get to see this sword infamously on the hip of Viserys, as obviously he's holding it. This is him sitting on the Iron Throne, and then you can kind of look that he does look like he's carrying a little bit of extra weight around his chin, much like with the TV show in Illyrio Mopatis. Illyrio Mopatis is supposed to be this huge, ridiculously fat guy. He has a litter carry him around almost everywhere, and if you watch Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 1, he's basically a middle-sized, like George Costanza-sized fellow. And he doesn't have yellow teeth, and he doesn't have a forked beard. So they're going for a more realistic approach. It does look like they had Paddy Considine leave the aftershave, or the 5 o'clock shadow of his mustache more so in, because technically, in the books, he does have a sort of like a pussy sweeper, or whatever, some clever word, a mustache, right? He has one of those. But I do not think that he is depicted with having long hair. For this show, it appears as though he is. Continuing on here, and that ring is most likely going to come into play as well, because if I'm not mistaken, one of the last things that King Jaehaerys does is give his ring to one of Helena's children, right? So this is his grandchildren. Helena is one of his children that he has with Alicent. So this is another one of Rhaenyra's half-siblings. It's her half-sister. Helena ends up marrying Aegon II, who I was just mentioning. He does wield Blackfire. Basically, when Viserys dies, all of the stuff that's on him is easily accessed by Alicent and all of the Greens because they're at King's Landing. Rhaenyra is over in Dragonstone. We just saw clips of them. That's most likely Rhaenyra finding out that her father has died. She was with Daemon at this time. They were married. They had a few children. She actually ends up losing her child after she hears about it. So this is likely that scene. Like, she labors for 3 days, and according to Mushroom, she actually curses not only all of her siblings once she finds out that her father died and that Aegon too has been crowned. She doesn't only curse them and say all the different ways she's going to punish them. She actually mentions all the different ways that she wants her child to get out of her. She curses her own child. So, Mushroom basically tells us, if we believe his version, that she kind of doomed herself during childbirth. But if this is the case, right? So, one of the last things that happens to King Viserys before he dies is, like, basically he dies while taking a nap. A servant who normally comes to give him a cup of hippocras discovers his body, then immediately goes and tells Alicent. Then Alicent has him locked up. But before that, he sits with Jaehaerys and Jaehaerys, I believe, and Helena, and he gives that ring, is what I'm imagining, since they're showing it in this teaser. He gives that ring to her, and that's one of, or to him, and that's one of the last things he does before he dies. So this looks like he is, gripping his sword itself, but they probably want to show this ring on his person several times in the show to make that scene more sentimental. But continuing on here, let's see how long we've been doing this for. We've been doing this for about 10 minutes. That's perfect. It's overly analyzed. So we'll go back and see what we missed here. Now, nothing much about a dynasty. We all know it's Targaryen dynasty. But what we do see here is this is a very clear shot of young Rhaenyra, who's played, at this time, Rhaenyra is played by Millie Alcock. For the most of the series, and I would assume for the most of the scenes in Season 1, she's going to be played by Emma Darcy. But this is important because this is right after she's wed to Laenor. And the Velaryons are the richest house in all of the Seven Kingdoms. They're richer than the Lannisters, and it's all thanks to Corlys. And I just mentioned this in a video from earlier, but basically Corlys goes on these journeys. I think he goes on his first voyage across the Narrow Sea when he's 6. But he's really good at sailing. He's one of the best sailors ever, and he doesn't just, ride on the ship. He washes the decks, he does all the rigging, he does all the sailing shit, he learns how to steer. But eventually he goes on a journey that leads him way across the Narrow Sea and past a bunch of places that are hardly ever visited in the Seven Kingdoms, and he loads up on rare spices and furs and silks and all types of tapestries and things that are worth a lot of money in the Seven Kingdoms. And then when he comes back, not all of the ships made it, but then when he comes back to Westeros, he literally doubles the worth of House Velaryons. So for a time, specifically during this time period, House Velaryon is the richest house in all of the Seven Kingdoms. So it's important to show that Rhaenyra is now dressed the part, right? So we will see the rest of House Velaryon coming in and rocking some beautifully gold inlaid type shit. But this is showing you in the teaser, this moment is when she's officially married Laenor, and they have, eloped, and this is probably before she says her goodbyes, before she either goes off to Driftmark or High Tide, or maybe they go and reside at Dragonstone. It depends on which direction they want to take the show, and if after this, we don't necessarily get a time jump, because it looks, from what we've seen in the leaks, it looks as though Rhaenyra films, this scene was filmed indoors, so we didn't actually see this. But it looks like she films a few scenes in a red dress, and Laenor's wearing a traditional House Velaryon sigil. But his dress looks very formal, and so does hers. So I think that was actually filmed at their wedding, and they're walking along the beach, and that's going to be a scene from the earlier timeline. And then we'll get them being married, most likely in King's Landing, and then we'll get the forward to older Rhaenyra, and then we have a scene coming up with Rhaenyra in the trailer dueling that infamous duel that ends up, leading to his death, right? So I will say something about the candles. There appears to be nothing special about those. We do not have any black candles. Wouldn't that be something to get a glass candle in the teaser? Just missed it up until now. So I've already talked about this scene, so I will continue on with this one. This is basically when Rhaenyra finds out the news about her father, and there is likely going to be some repercussions because of that. Now, I have been sent some information where someone mentioned that this scene in particular is actually at the death of Laena, and Daemon and Rhaenyra have actually first hooked up, and that's why Rhaenyra's clothes are torn, and they're actually watching Aemon One Eye mount Vhagar. And that means that their side has just lost a dragon. And Daemon in particular looks pissed off because his wife, Laena, Vhagar was her dragon. So if anything, he probably feels some sort of a claim to that dragon because Vhagar bonded with Caraxes, his dragon, when him and Laena went off sailing across the AOC when they first got married. So maybe he's looking at Vhagar pissed off, like, are you seriously allowing someone else to mount you when Laena just died? You know, it's interesting because dragons are connected with their riders, and even though Laena's dead, maybe Vhagar has a connection with Caraxes, and Caraxes connected with Daemon, and Vhagar can tell that Daemon is forsaking Laena by having sex with Rhaenyra. I just realized how dumb this sounds. And that's why Vhagar is okay with being mounted by Aemon One Eye. I don't know. You all let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Continuing on here. This is the infamous tourney in which Criston Cole wreaks havoc. He literally beats the shit out of everyone, and it appears as though this is that shot of Dark Sister right there. Bam. It's nowhere near as ornate as people thought it would be, but hey, it's a used sword. It's literally being used in a tourney, which brings me to wonder. They're supposed to use blunted weapons. Is that Dark Sister, or is that not just some sort of a dragon blade? Because this is clearly a tourney. This is not a trial. That's Criston Cole, and that's clearly Daemon. It's interesting that they didn't use as many plumes on the main series, but almost every single night, at least in the tourney, specifically in Night of the Seven Kingdoms, there's a lot of tourneys that happens there. But in the main series, when there's knights that are riding off the battle, most of them are described as having some sort of heraldic plume, and the Targaryens specifically are known to have blood red ones, right? So it's awesome to see that they're paying this much attention to detail this early on. But just I wonder if that's not Dark Sister actually, because why would he be using that weapon in a tourney? Like they're wearing full armors, but traditionally in a melee of sorts, you use blunted weapons. Your sword doesn't have an edge. You use real armor, but your goal is to knock the other opponent out. It's not necessarily to kill them, although that does happen accidentally. I'm going to say that's not Dark Sister. And if it is, they kind of forgot that you're supposed to use tourney weapons. And maybe Daemon gets pissed and pull... Well, no, because Dark Sister is knocked from his hand. So Dark Sister is used in this scene. So yeah, because specifically it's mentioned that Dark Sister is removed from Daemon's hand. All right. So that's interesting. Why? I guess that's why they're wearing full armor. They wouldn't need full plate armor like that and underplate if they had tourney weapons. But just continuing on here, we get a quick shot of Corlys next. And then I've already mentioned that scene as well. That's where House Velaryons shows up. And I've talked about Corlys a little bit for this video as well. If you all want me to do a video on Book Corlys and some of his journeys, let me know down below in the comment section. But this right here is Misery, the White Worm. And one interesting factoid about her is that Daemon, initially, she's one of Daemon's concubines when he is known as the Prince of the City. He gets in a few fights, he kills a few people, but ultimately he hooks up with Mysaria, and they are with child. She loses her child when King Viserys finds out about this and forces Daemon to send her away. Daemon ultimately holds a grudge against his brother after this because of that. And then next, we get this shot of Alicent walking up to demand justice, an eye for an eye. She demands that Viserys lose his eye because Aemon lost his. And obviously, the king says, none of that. Y'all kiss and make up. It's mentioned that Aemon does say he lost his eye for a dragon, so that's kind of a fair trade. This is another tourney. This looks like that infamous tourney where the greens versus the blacks is established, and that's, I've mentioned that so many times. I feel like I'm talking in circles, so I'm going to wrap this video up super quick here. But this is where Rhaenyra wears black and red for her traditional House Targaryen colors, and it looks like they're mostly going with the red gown, and there'll probably be some black embroidery on it. And then Alicent wears her colors of House Hightower, which are greens, and she's wearing variations of those. So from this point forward, the respective parties, the queen and the princess, are known as the greens and the blacks. So the last few shots of this trailer are stuff that I've already mentioned, that duel with Rhaenyra, and this is a shot that is highly debated, but it's 100% Rhaenyra walking up to Daemon on the throne. This is going to be the show's version of Daemon teaching Rhaenyra how to pleasure a man, because Rhaenyra is very much in love with Criston Cole, and she wants to know how to please him, almost. It'll be interesting to see how the early relationship between Daemon and Rhaenyra is going to be. Daemon would always bring her gifts whenever he would cross the Narrow Sea and come back, and he paid a lot of special attention to her because, well, he knew that she's not only the realm's delight, and she would make progresses across the Seven Kingdoms, and people loved her, but also she's the Princess of Dragonstone. She's next in line for the Iron Throne. So if Daemon could ultimately have a relationship with her, he's that much closer to the Iron Throne. And in this scene in particular, it's probably like a power play, because Daemon knows that he probably shouldn't be sitting on the Iron Throne. If it was her father, they wouldn't take the time to include it in the teaser, in my opinion, although it very much could be, because like I just mentioned, this version of Viserys does have the long traditional Targaryen curly hair, the long traditional Targaryen hair. And then the last few shots are just the sigil burning, and I've broken that down a million times. I want to thank you all so much for watching. My name is Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews.